Stage 5 of the Critérium du Dauphiné, presented by American Classic. And the race finally hits the mountains today with our first summit finish on tap.
Big mountain to finish off today's stage, and a great chance to see the Tour de France contenders go tooth and nail at each other on this very tough climb to the finish line. Chris Froome, he's in a perfect position after the time trial, but Alberto Contador really needs to prove himself on today's stage. He had a miserable time trial yesterday and is looking for some redemption on today's mountain stage.
The Tour de France just a few weeks away. A chance to test the climbing legs today at the Dauphiné. This is the Epic Cycle Series presented by Michelob Ultra. Stage 5 of the 65th Critérium du Dauphiné. A relatively short stage, but leading up to the first summit finish of this year's race. Hi everyone, Steve Schlanger alongside Bob Roll. And a new leader going into the second half of the race now for the first time. David Velou led for the first 3 days, but Rohan Dennis of the Garmin Sharp team, after finishing second in the time trial yesterday, moves to the top spot. Chris Froome, the big contender for the Tour de France, is now in second place by just a few seconds, so things really changing as we hit the mountains today.
Bartosz Huzarski on the attack here with František Rabon, and from Eritrea, Daniel Tekelhayamount. The rider in third position here. Big breakaway, getting away early on the stage. A lot of attacking at the start of today's stage. Just 86.5 miles long, but finishes off with a big mountain to finish and a GC day, most certainly, on today's stage in the Dauphiné.
We had two groups come together earlier to form our largest breakaway at this year's race. 15 riders strong at one point. They had over 5 minutes, and now that has come apart, and we're down to just over a 2-minute lead for a 3-man move. And today's route taking the riders southeast over 4 climbs and ending at the summit finish.
They started in Grésy-sur-Aix, the finishing town. On the horizon, and that's the top of a giant mountain to finish off the stage. 3 climbs out on the race course. Albertville, site of the Olympics, has already been passed through. And on the slopes of the Valmorel, the Monte de Valmorel, a very tough, beyond category climb to finish today's stage.
A valley towards the end of the stage, and then leading into the final climb of just inside of 13 kilometers in length. That's about 8 miles of climbing, averaging 7%, and they're just about to start that now. Team Sky at the very front. Now, they're not the team that has the overall race lead, but they do have the overall race favorite in Chris Froome, who sits 5 seconds behind Rohan Dennis in the general classification. And Froome, the overall favorite now, because Alberto Contador lost 2 minutes and 44 seconds to Froome in the time trial yesterday. A surprising amount of time.
A big chunk of time lost by Alberto Contador does not bode well for his chances, not just in the Dauphiné, but even looking forward to the Tour de France. In Contador's defense, he did complain about suffering from some allergies, and he's also done a big chunk of training, big block of training leading into this, the Dauphiné, and presumably he'll have a couple of weeks to rest after this race and be ready and at his best for the Tour de France this summer.
From that 15-rider breakaway, all we have are these 3 riders left on the final climb now. Their margin just over 2 minutes with just over a dozen kilometers left to go. Not a particularly long climb. These aren't the high extended alpine climbs we'll see at the Tour de France, so some other climbers could be in the mix for a stage win if the breakaway is able to bring those 3 back. And with Team Sky at the front, not only do they have Chris Froome positioned 5 seconds behind the overall race leader in second place, but Team Sky has 4 of their riders in the top 6 right now on the general classification.
Pretty astounding riding. Richie Porte right up there, Boas and Hagen, and Geraint Thomas all in the top 10 in the overall standings, and they have taken over control of the front of the peloton.
But everyone behind the man who is the subject of our Michelob Ultra athlete profile, that is Rohan Dennis, the Australian for Garmin Sharp, just 23 years of age, has a track background, also a national under-23 time trial champion on 2 different occasions. So his ride against the clock yesterday, not all that surprising. The only man who beat him is the best time trialist in the world right now, Tony Martin.
He also won the King of the Mountains competition at the Tour Down Under a little bit earlier in the season. And that may be giving his team a little bit of hope that he can stay in that jersey at the top of today's climb, but he will have to defend that against the very best climbers in the bike racing business today. Chris Froome, Alberto Contador, Joaquim Rodriguez. Joaquim Rodriguez, another disappointing ride in the time trial, finished 70th yesterday, and he finds himself a long ways down in the overall standings. Joaquim Rodriguez, 37th. This is a man who's talking about getting on the podium in the Tour de France. He has to improve his effort against the clock if he's ever going to be able to do that.
Well, let's start with this breakaway here, Bob. Any chance that they're going to make it to the summit by themselves, holding off the field and some of the stragglers from the earlier breakaway who are 15 seconds behind, or do you think they'll be swallowed up at some point?
No, this breakaway has a very good chance to stay away. They were part of a giant group throughout the day's proceedings, and when you're in a bigger breakaway, it doesn't require as much energy to stay in front of the peloton. So with just over 10 kilometers left, or about 7 miles in the bike race, to still have 2 minutes plus, these three riders in the front have a chance to fight out for the stage win.
Team Sky at the front, the yellow jersey in the middle of the screen, behind the Sky Riders in the dark colors. That is Rohan Dennis, the native of Adelaide, Australia, the new overall race leader. Only the second leader we've had at the race now in the first 5 days, and certainly has his work cut out for him to maintain that yellow jersey, with Chris Froome just 5 seconds behind, and now down to just under 12 kilometers left to go on stage number 5. It's a twisting, turning final climb they are on right now. They had 2 Category 4 climbs earlier in the stage, also a Cat 3, now an HC climb as it is rated, and or the Category beyond classification, the steepest climb they faced so far here at the Dauphiné this year.
Rabon, a little bit of trouble in that breakaway, getting dropped a bit. The green still to go. The final climb of the day. The riders have completed the red portion of this graphic. 86 total miles of the stage, but the principal difficulty coming at the very end, a tough climb to the finish line.
While there are a lot of bends leading up to the ski resort, it is a big wide road, so that works in the riders' favor. And it does level off ever so slightly right at the top, but a lot of twists and turns on the way. The riders will go through a tunnel just about 50 meters or so before the finish line, and there's a sharp turn as well leading into that tunnel. However, by that point, it's a process of attrition for a lot of riders who will be just burned off the pack and hanging on.
Rabon continuing to struggle here, being dropped by Huzarski and Tikla-Hymenaut. On the front of the peloton, the machine from Belarus, Vasily Kirienka, absolutely grinding away, pulverizing the group. A vastly reduced peloton now, chasing our two men, followed by Rabon at 2 minutes and 11 seconds over the peloton.
Well, Bob, as we mentioned, it is the first chance for the Tour de France contenders to really stretch the climbing legs and show what they have, provided they want to show that form. As far as a Contador, Froome, Rodriguez, Valverde, and the others, coming down to a final climb like this, when would you expect to see those attacks start?
Well, for Chris Froome, he's in an admirable position. He can wait until the very end and watch what his rivals do. For Rodriguez, he's got a very punchy acceleration to the line. He might want to wait till the end, but for Alberto Contador, just about any time on the last climb that he feels good, he needs to go on the attack, try to claw back some of that disadvantage that he was establishing yesterday's time trial.
And the rider just launching a move off the front of the field, the Russian Igor Silin of the Astana team. Now back up to the front of the race here with the lead just over 2 minutes. Back to the main field in the yellow jersey. Daniel Tekla-Hymenaut out front. And Tim Wellens, the rider with the unzipped jersey for Lotto Belisol here, coming up behind him.
Wellens, a part of that big breakaway early in the stage, was dropped by Tekla-Hymenaut and Huzarski, but has recovered a bit and is back into the front of the bike race. Daniel Tekla-Hymenaut from Eritrea on the Orica squad on the wheel of Tim Wellens. Tim Wellens, just 22 years of age, turned professional last summer and doing a great ride here on the first big mountaintop finish of this year's Dauphiné, out in the front, 2 minutes plus lead with just about 6.5 miles left in the bike race.
And Tekla-Hymenaut sitting on the back now. Eritrea, a small little nation in northeast Africa, and he hasn't had much of a chance to race this year because he's had visa problems all year long. Finally, just now got those sorted out, and here he is at the Critérium du Dauphiné, and getting a chance to test exactly where he is and maybe find some form getting in this breakaway on stage number 5.
He was 6th in the Tour of l'Avenir, the stage race for the under 23 peloton, which bodes well for his career as a professional. Also the first Eritrean to compete in the Olympics outside of track and field. Very difficult selection process for anybody to even get into the Olympics. So Daniel Tikahimeno, solid performer. As we see Kirienka pulling off the front, his former teammates from Movistar have now taken over the pacemaking at the front of the peloton.
And Movistar, the team with the dark colors, the green helmets, riding for Alejandro Valverde, their squad leader, who is a 2-time winner of the Critérium du Dauphiné. 2 leaders hitting the 10K to go mark. That's just over 6 miles to the finish. What we haven't seen, though, is the Garmin Sharp team of our overall leader, Rohan Dennis, riding at the front, protecting that yellow jersey. You surprised?
I'm not surprised at that. They've done a lot of work throughout today's stage to keep the breakaway close. And there's the man in yellow, about 15 riders back. Now it's up to him whether or not he can keep that jersey or not.
So Movistar and Sky, now the 2 teams at the front of the field, trying to bring back the breakaway on stage number 5. Just under 6 miles left to go to a summit finish. The upper reaches of the mountains in eastern France, still snow covered here in early June. And down to 2 riders left from what was a 15-man breakaway earlier. It's come apart on the final climb. There are some riders scattered behind these 2 in front of the field, but most of those riders going backwards. And the field itself is really a reduced field of general classification contenders who are a minute 51 behind our 2 leaders, and here they are right now. The green section is what they have left to ride on the day's final climb.
The 2 men in front, this would be the biggest win of their careers if they were able to hold off the field. Now being led by the Movistar squad, Alejandro Valverde, their team leader, one of the outside pre-race favorites for the Tour de France, lost a lot of time in the time trial.
The yellow jersey of Rohan Dennis, and just in front of him, perhaps his biggest challenger right now on the GC, Chris Froome of Team Sky. Froome, a stage winner at the Tour last year, and also helping Brad Wiggins win the race outright. He won the Tour of Oman earlier this season, then went on to win the Tour de Romandie. A terrific spring campaign for the Kenyan-born British rider, and now the outright favorite to win the Critérium du Dauphiné, given that his biggest rival, Alberto Contador, lost so much time in the time trial. And Froome has really looked good so far in this race, and now we should get an opportunity to see how good he is climbing here in our first big day in the mountains.
Perhaps his only real rival is his own teammate, Richie Porte. Similar circumstance earlier this year in the Critérium International. It was Richie Porte leading into the final mountain stage of that race. Chris Froome overhauling him in the overall standings.
And now Tim Wellens dropping Daniel Tekla-Hemeno here. So Wellens of the Lotto Belisol team, the 22-year-old Belgian, is now out front by himself.
Waited just a little bit longer to make his acceleration on the mountain than the 3 men that he's now dropped. The last one being Tekla-Hemeno. Tim Wellens started his cycling career as the mountain biker, was the under 23, junior national cross-country mountain bike champion of Belgium, which is a pretty astounding result. A lot of people in Belgium, they are the best in the world at cyclocross on the men's side, and they love their mountain biking, and that's where this man, Tim Wellens, got his start. Came over to the Lotto development squad, stayed there for 3 years, and now he's made it onto the Pro Tour team, and getting up this mountain faster than anybody so far from the breakaway, holding on to a minute 46 advantage over the peloton.
Our yellow jersey is 6th wheel without much team support. It is Movistar and Sky, the 2 teams with the most riders at the front. Sky looking very good, collectively strong. Their leader, Froome, remember, is only 5 seconds behind the yellow jersey coming into the day on the general classification. So you have to think that Froome has a very good shot of taking that yellow jersey in the overall lead by the end of the day. But here's my question, Bob. Do they want the yellow jersey this soon? Still 3 more stages to go in the mountains after today. Would they prefer that Dennis hangs on to it for another day or 2?
Well, they've been doing the brunt of the chasing anyways, so why not get the yellow jersey, give your riders something to work for, a real goal to defend that. Only 3 more days. Chris Froome solid in the mountains. And recently, if there's any indication of once he gets the yellow jersey in a stage race, he never lets go of it. That's been the case throughout this season. And also Team Sky, an absolute juggernaut. If you look at this group, maybe 30 riders left, 7 guys from Team Sky. Think you could take the jersey at will and have not too much to worry about. It's a lot more straightforward. This is what the peloton expects. They expect Team Sky to do the tempo because Chris Froome's so dominant against his rivals in the time trial and also a great climber. He's third wheel now, but Rowan Dennis putting up a great defense of the yellow jersey so far. His pedaling looks a little bit more labored, a much bigger gear than Chris Froome is using currently, but that just might be his climbing style.
And you have a strong rider on a very powerful team. Always a question of how soon do you want to take the overall lead? If you have the option, sometimes letting other teams do more of the work is a better way to go. But hey, if it's out there, sometimes you just want to get it as soon as possible. 2 riders on the right-hand side of the screen being picked up from the early break. Rabon and Sarmiento. They are back with this group. So 1 by 1, 2 by 2. This field of GC contenders picking off the early break. And now our last man out front. Only a minute and a half up the road with 8K left to climb. Tim Wellens is our lone leader on the final climb of the day, stage number 5 of the Critérium du Dauphiné, presented by American Classic. It's the final of 4 climbs, and now he's down to the final 7.5K. That's just over 4 miles to the top, and this is the primary group chasing him: Movistar, Sky, and the yellow jersey of overall race leader Rohan Dennis. The red portion of that graphic is the terrain the riders have already covered. The green is what they still have left to ride.
Movistar on the front. David Lopez Herrada, we saw him on the attack, stage number 1. From the breakaway, being picked up by his teammate Eros Kopecky, doing the tempo at the front of the field. Let's see if Lopez Herrada has anything left as Eros Kopecky pulls off and weighs anchor. Team Sky now under full control of the peloton.
Back up to Wellens. Still showing some pretty good form here. After pulling away from Daniel Teclahimeno, you see riders in the background, remnants of the breakaway, but Wellens seems to be gaining time on them, and 90 seconds now ahead of this group.
David Lopez at the front of the peloton. Lopez Herrada a little bit off the front, but on Lopez's wheel from the Sky team. His teammate Richie Porte caught his 2-minute man, and that was Alberto Contador in yesterday's time trial. So Richie Porte finds himself 5th place in the overall standings, just 33 seconds behind the man in yellow, Rowan Dennis, who's making a absolutely fantastic defense of that leader's jersey. Just 23 years old and mixing it with the big guys.
That's Alejandro Valverde now from Movistar, coming up behind Lopez, his teammate. And Valverde, the only former winner of the Dauphiné in the race this year. He's won it on 2 occasions, and now making a move here to get a gap on the other GC contenders.
7 kilometers to go. An audacious move by Alejandro Valverde. Type of move that could succeed, getting a little bit of time back perhaps, but a stage win at this point would be a fantastic result for the Spaniard from the Movistar squad. Second wheel in our picture, that's Alejandro Valverde using Lopez Herrada to do just the maximum amount he's capable of. And Valverde will use that as a launch pad, trying for a stage win now, animating the final climb of today's stage.
Alejandro Valverde 2 minutes 42 seconds behind Rohan Dennis on the general classification. But he is a good climber. He's got a fast finish. He likes this race. And among the marquee names coming in who could potentially battle for the GC win, he's the first one to make a move on the final climb leading up to the summit finish.
Long ways out for Valverde to go. It might spell doom for this man, Tim Wellens, alone in the front of the bike race. If the GC contenders and best climbers in the business start attacking now this far from the finish line, that 1 minute and 13-second advantage that Willems enjoys will be gone.
Coming up on the final 4 miles, and 1:13 now back to that yellow jersey group, which Alejandro Valverde is just off the front of right now.
No panic from Team Sky. Lopez and Porte right at the front of the affairs. They can give Valverde a little bit of time. He starts today's stage 2 minutes and 37 seconds behind Chris Froome and 2 minutes 42 seconds behind the race leader Rowan Dennis.
Remember, there are no time bonuses at this race, so everybody has to get physical time gaps. And with Team Sky at the front of the group, and on the far left-hand side of the screen with the yellow stripes, you can see Alberto Contador. Bob, you have to wonder if he might attack at some point soon, just because it's in his nature. He loves to attack on the big climbs, and he needs those physical gaps over Chris Froome and the others because he's almost 3 minutes back on the GC.
Contador starting today's stage 34th in the overall standings. That's a position he's not accustomed to in the big stage races. Very proficient in the time trial in his career, but yesterday was an absolute disaster for Chris Froome. For Alberto Contador. He has been training hard leading into the Dauphiné and did complain of some allergies. I don't know if that tells the full story. His best days in time trialing might be over, but he's still one of the best climbers in the world.
There is Contador up out of the saddle right there. This group thinning out right now. A select group of GC contenders left, just over a minute back of our lone leader here with half a dozen K left to go to the summit. Beginning Saturday, June 29th, NBC and the NBC Sports Network invite you to celebrate a century of brutal climbs, thrilling sprints, and unparalleled triumph. It's the 100th Tour de France. Coverage begins Saturday, June 29th on the NBC Sports Network. Tim Wellens, last man out front right now, leading by himself. Other riders who were part of a large early breakaway being picked up by this reduced main field. The lead for Wellens just over 1 minute, and here's Alejandro Valverde losing his teammate. He's now on his own. Again, 2:42 back on the GC, so he has a little leash to work with here, but we'll see how much of a gap he gets before they start to try and bring him back.
A rather odd attack there by Alejandro Valverde. He's never gained more than about 20 meters off the front of the peloton. He's persisting, however, and Team Sky in line there and really putting the hurt on the field. Rowan Dennis following Chris Froome throughout the climb so far. That's the perfect wheel to be on. If you can stay there, he could keep the jersey for another day. That would be an absolutely spectacular result for the young man on the Garmin squad.
Now the green portion of this graphic, all that's left to go of this relatively short stage. Day 5 of this 8-day race at the Critérium du Dauphiné. Our leader in the yellow jersey sitting third wheel, right behind the man who's second on the GC, Chris Froome, 5 seconds down. And Rowan Dennis does have a teammate that's in this group. However, he's at the back in a blue jersey, and that is Andrew Talansky, who started off really feeling bad. Had a stomach bug, lost a lot of time the first couple of stages, but says he's now starting to feel better, and he's showing it by staying with this group so late in the stage.
Signs of life for Andrew Talansky. Got a chance to talk with his team manager, Jonathan Vaughters, and they're hoping that he recovers a little bit.
Check this out. Another American, Matthew Boucher of the Radio Shack squad, has bridged up, and now he's about to get on the back of our leader, Wellens.
Matthew Boucher from the breakaway, timing his effort, and he's come back to the front of the bike race. We haven't seen him throughout the climb, lost in the traffic a little bit, but Matthew Boucher from the United States onto the wheel of Tim Wellens, being chased by that man inside of 1 minute now. That's Alejandro Valverde, and that's to this group. Still led by the Sky team, and Chris Froome now is on second wheel.
3 miles left to go to the summit, and most of the breakaway riders were going backwards. Boucher, the only one who's been able to find a second win and make it back up to the front, as other riders continue to be gobbled up on the road by this field of GC riders. But what a performance by Boucher to find another gear and get back to Wellens, who's at the front. Now we have a 2-man group inside of a minute ahead of this contingent of riders.
Brent Bookwalter being picked up from the breakaway, hoping to get a place in the BMC squad of the Tour de France. He did help Cadel Evans win the Tour in 2011, but was not on the team at last year's Tour.
And now Matthew Boucher dropping Tim Wellens here. Boucher, one of 9 Americans at the Dauphiné this year, our lone leader out front. The 28-year-old from Wisconsin, former national road champion in 2011 and coming off a top 10 at the recent Amgen Tour of California, so he's got some good form.
being chased by this man, Alejandro Valverde, but Matthew Boucher in with a big chance now to win the stage inside of 5 kilometers, 3 miles left in the bike race. And Matthew Boucher, a rather handy lead of almost 50 seconds to the yellow jersey group of Rowan Dennis. It's Boucher that was able to recognize his tempo, and he's kept the pace the best out of anybody from the breakaway. He didn't sprint at the early opening miles of the climb. He saved himself, and he's putting it on at the right moment now, and he has a great chance to win the stage.
No attacks from some of the top GC riders back here as of yet, so that works in Boucher's favor. Richie Porte now at the front with the unzipped jersey, setting the pace for his teammate Chris Froome right behind. Then our overall leader Rohan Dennis, and just behind Alberto Contador, who also has a couple of teammates with him for the Saxo Tinkoff squad.
Very select group now. Richie Porte and Chris Froome in the closing miles of the bike race. A long ways ahead of them, however, is Matthew Boucher. 37 seconds now to this group. Richie Porte has come to the front. He starts the day just a few seconds behind his team leader, Chris Froome. Chris Froome's second wheel, but Rowan Dennis hanging on for dear life now, and looks to be struggling still, but he's looked that way throughout the climb, and he's made an incredible selection here. Contador is still there, and he's on the wheel of Michael Rogers, also coming off some good form from the Tour of California recently.
As far as Rohan Dennis, his teammate Andrew Talansky was losing contact with that group, but this American doing quite well. Matthew Boucher of the Radio Shack squad, the only rider from the largest breakaway of this year's race to be able to pace himself, measure his effort, and then find some energy late in the stage to not only get up to our leader, but then pass him to take the lead here with just over 4K left.
Tim Wellens still in between Valverde and Boucher. 2 men left from Sky in the front, Richie Porte and Chris Froome's second wheel. Still chasing this man. 37-second advantage, 4 kilometers to the finish line. The gap's starting to tumble now precipitously for Matthew Boucher.
2.5 miles uphill left to ride. It would be the biggest win of his career if he can hang on to this, but the math is not in his favor at the moment, with the gap at 38 seconds and the caliber of riders who are at that gap. Froome, Contador, Porte, Rodriguez, Valverde. Some experienced, accomplished climbers coming into the frame right about now.
A lot of turmoil for Boucher's team throughout the season. The Radio Shack squad, would the sponsorship stay? Would the team carry on? It looks as if they are going to under the name of Trek. Maybe a little bit of change in management. The Pro Tour license up for grabs. But Matthew Boucher perhaps qualifying himself for a ride in the Tour de France for what would be the first tour for Matthew Boucher in his career, and he's having a great day here on the Motte Valmorel to finish off today's stage number 5 of the Dauphiné.
As far as the yellow jersey there, Bob, how surprised are you that Rohan Dennis has been able to hang with this group? He said after yesterday's time trial performance, he was just hoping to get the white jersey as the best young rider, and anything else now is a bonus. Yet here he is slugging out with the big boys very late.
Oh, absolutely fabulous ride by Rowan Dennis, and a name to be reckoned with for the future. He's right there with the very best in the world defending that yellow jersey. A tremendous amount of pressure, and for just a 23-year-old, he just had his birthday the Sunday before last, so he's just turned 23, mixing it with the very best. It's a spectacular defense of that lead so far by Rowan Dennis on the Garmin squad.
Matthew Boucher, our lone leader. Alejandro Valverde here. Now about 29 seconds back. So just a few seconds ahead of what's left of the field. So Valverde here is closer to the field than he is Boucher. Wellens there coming through. He's about to be picked up by this group as well.
Richie Porte continuing to grind away. They're about to pick up Tim Wellens from that early breakaway. 3 kilometers, 2 miles left in the bike race. Wellens will be caught. Great ride from the breakaway. Almost held off the field, but not quite. But he did get dropped by another rider from that American, Matthew Boucher, who is solo up the road, closing in on the last 3 kilometers of the race. Rowan Dennis gritting his teeth now, staying on the wheel of Chris Froome. Incredible effort by the young man on the Garmin squad.
And Chris Froome just turned over his left shoulder to check out Rohan Dennis, see what he was looking like, how he was riding. How does he seem to be riding to you, Bob?
Well, the legs getting choppy. He's rocking all over the machine. He could hang on to the end, but he looks to me like he's about to pop. But a spirited defense, great defense of the yellow jersey. You can see him looking down, shoulders starting to narrow, coming out of the slipstream of Chris Froome, and really, once you start to see a rider pulling on the bars like that so dramatically, generally it's a sign they're about to get dropped.
Valverde here. Just maintaining that small gap back to the field. Really not going anywhere.
Grinding, pulverizing tempo being set by Richie Porte. Just 15 men left in the head of affairs, and Valverde will come back into the fold. Rowan Dennis hang.
Our top GC riders are here in this group. They brought back Alejandro Valverde, and our leader is the American Matthew Boucher, hoping to hang on for the biggest win of his career. A lead of 24 seconds. They'll hit the summit finish when we come back. Oh, look at this. The yellow jersey of Rowan Dennis now slipping backwards. He was up near Chris Froome in the front of the GC group, and now he is losing some time. Remember, he starts the day only 5 seconds ahead of Froome on the general classification.
Looking for a wheel to get on. That's hard to do at the end of a long mountain climb. Rowan Dennis, this is the end of the line, so he's about 15th. Richie Porte still on the front. Chris Froome sitting pretty second wheel. But the yellow jersey now in all kinds of trouble. Alejandro Valverde, third wheel. Mick Rogers, fourth man in line on his wheel. His teammate and captain, Alberto Contador.
A striking difference between the cadence of Sky and Rowan Dennis as we move back up to our leader, Matthew Boucher, maintaining the margin of 24 seconds. Just under 2 miles left to go to the finish. Now look at this. Dennis coming off the back, really laboring, while the Sky Riders, Porte and Froome at the front, are looking extremely fluid.
When you look at the cadence difference, Rowan Dennis in the big chain ring, trying to claw his way back into the tempo being set by Richie Porte, and they are chasing that man. Matthew Boucher having a good ride. Dennis starting to go backwards now, but just 2 kilometers from the finish line. He has only 5 seconds to lose to Chris Froome in order to maintain that jersey. He's still there right now, but it's probably about a 5-second gap right now to the last wheel in this long line of the men in the peloton. This is everything that's left from the stage, and Matthew Boucher, the lone leader, just in front. 21 seconds advantage over this field. 2 kilometers to go, just over a mile, and a 21-second advantage for Matthew Boucher. And Dennis now starting to feel the effects of this final climb of the stage.
Matthew Boucher at the front. Meantime, Chris Froome turned over his right shoulder to look down the road to see what was happening to Dennis, so he knows that he's losing time, and Froome realizing that he is probably riding into the yellow jersey at this point. Froome still has his teammate Richie Porte in front of him. Right behind Froome, Alejandro Valverde of Movistar. Then Michael Rogers of Saxo just in front of his teammate Alberto Contador.
Porte, Froome, and Contador looking over their shoulders up the road just now to see where Matthew Boucher is, and he's 23 seconds now, so he's increased his advantage by a couple of seconds. As Rowan Dennis has been dropped, he'll have to try to get to the finish line just as quickly as he can do, but in danger of losing his leader's jersey right now.
Close to a mile left to go to the summit. Can the American Matthew Boucher hang on to this gap? Got some fans along the roadside, the twists and turns up to the ski resort, and now some attacks. That's Contador off the front.
Contador going, Ryan Taramay, the man from Cofidis in the red and white, trying to match that. Richie Porte, still some energy left for Richie Porte, but when is Chris Froome going to come out and play? It's up to Chris Froome now to close the gap down. Richie Porte's done all the tempo for the last 3 kilometers. Chris Froome still sitting on his wheel, and Alberto Contador, a big attack now. He's taking time out of Matthew Boucher.
There's the red kite, 1 kilometer left to go to the summit for our leader Matthew Boucher, but Alberto Contador finally launching one of his signature attacks late on a summit finish stage. Chris Froome back here in front of Alejandro Valverde. Now Froome can give Contador a little room here because he is almost 3 minutes ahead of him on the general classification, but finally starting to see in the mountains. That preview of the Tour de France we have been alluding to. Froome just riding a steady tempo. Contador on the attack, and everybody chasing this man at the front. Matthew Boucher trying to ride away to a stage win at the Dauphiné.
Matthew Boucher within a kilometer of glory here.
Oh,
he
here
just
they
sees
come.
Contador on his shoulder, though.
And now Froome starting to make the move. He goes by Critérium and coming up behind Contador at the top of the screen.
Alberto Contador forgetting about yesterday's disappointment on the attack here. But Matthew Boucher just a slight advantage with just a few hundred meters to go in the bike race.
There's a little tunnel they'll go through, a sharp right-hand turn. Boucher desperately trying to hang on. Now Froome ahead of Contador.
Froome sweeping up to Contador in just a few pedal strokes. Great riding by Chris Froome. The moment he made his acceleration, well, he caught up to Contador immediately.
And now an acceleration by Froome.
Just one man in front of these two. And yes, Chris Froome now going for glory here. Matthew Boucher, this is where the course flattens out a little bit. A chance for Matthew Boucher to win the stage.
And now it'll kick back up inside of the final 500 meters. Froome hunting down Boucher. Contador on his wheel for a stage win in the yellow jersey at the Dauphiné. There's the tunnel. And after 3.5 hours, Matthew Boucher with just a few hundred meters to go, and he's going to be caught and passed by Chris Froome. Froome, the top contender for the Tour de France, dropping Boucher, dropping his top rival Contador, and Chris Froome, a huge exclamation point on his chances for the Tour de France. He wins his first ever stage at the Critérium du Dauphiné. Contador second and Boucher third.
Great riding by Chris Froome. He did the time trial he needed to do, but today was absolutely spectacular. Catching Matthew Boucher, a heartache for Boucher. Boucher will finish third on the stage, but nobody could deny Chris Froome on today's stage of the Dauphiné.
Chris Froome proving that he is the best right now in the business at this race. And as far as the Tour de France competition, maybe head and shoulders above the rest. His 8th win of this season, on terrific form all year long, and now the yellow jersey will also go over to Froome, as this man, Rohan Dennis, will lose it after struggling in the final few kilometers. He hung with them for a long time, was right behind Froome until the final miles of the final climb, but Dennis, a valiant effort, will lose the yellow jersey to the man they call Froome Dog.
Hats off to Rohan Dennis. A tremendous defense of that jersey. He fell about a minute behind the stage winner, that man, Chris Froome. But for a young professional like Rohan Dennis, that's a pretty thrilling day out on the roads of the Dauphiné.
A confidence jolt for Froome, and a warning for everyone else that will go head-to-head with him in just a few weeks' time. Other riders still coming across on this first of 3 summit finishes in the final 4 days. Chris Froome ahead of Alberto Contador and Matthew Boucher in the top 3. Alejandro Valverde, after a late attack, finishes 10 seconds down. Richie Porte in 9th, pacing Froome most of the way. He was terrific in support of his teammate. And Rohan Dennis holds the jersey for 1 day and then loses it to this man, Chris Froome, who wins the stage and takes the overall lead. His 8th win of the season, and we'll hear from the new leader of the Critérium du Dauphiné after this. Chris Froome, born in Kenya, raised in Great Britain, and the subject of our competitive cyclist ride of the day as he rode away from the American Matthew Boucher and Alberto Contador in the final half kilometer of stage number 5 to pick up his first ever Critérium du Dauphiné stage victory in our competitive cyclist ride of the day. The 8th win of the season for a rider who says he's not even in his best form yet.
A pretty fearsome statement there. Chris Froome, when he does hit his best form, presumably in a couple of weeks' time at the Tour de France, he's going to be a very tough man to beat if today's stage is any indication.
Spent most of the year training in Tenerife. The last 10 days in his European base of Monaco. And now the overall leader at the Critérium du Dauphiné after 5 days of racing. Leading his teammate by 52 seconds. Rohan Dennis, who had the yellow jersey, slips down the standings into third. Jakob Fuglsang rounds out the top 10, 2:20 off the pace of our new leader, Chris Froome. Alberto Contador loses a few seconds to Froome, now 2:49 behind. American Matthew Boucher, who almost pulled off the stage win, 3:46 back, but he's in the top 20. Now Chris Froome now taking the lead with 3 stages left to go. All pretty big climbing days, but that's right where he wants to be.
Perfect position for Chris Froome. He's got a great team. He had an incredible time trial yesterday and a dominant performance on today's stage. He is our new leader.
Chris Froome wearing the yellow jersey and no doubt satisfied with his performance so far.
Christopher, yesterday was a first important step. Today was an even bigger one. Can you take us through those final few kilometers when Contador attacked, you reacted? Richie Porte did his part of the job as well.
Oh, yeah, Richie did a fantastic job today. He and Pete Kenner really controlled the final climb. But excuse me. But my teammates, I mean, generally just holding me in position all day at the front of the peloton, bringing me to climb in perfect position. The objective wasn't necessarily to go for the stage today, but after that work they did, it feels like it's the least I can do today to at least get the victory for them, because yeah, they really rode a fantastic race today and did everything they could for me.
How are the legs? How are the legs today? How have been the legs since the start, and how do you rate yourself now compared to what will happen in a couple of weeks?
It's an interesting one. I mean, yesterday and today were 2 really important tests, because these are days like this that are going to define the Tour de France. But I don't feel like I'm on 100% form yet. I still feel like I've got to do a bit of work after this to get myself into really good shape for the Tour. But we're definitely heading in the right direction. I can't be asking for too much more at this stage.
Well, he can ask to hold that yellow jersey for 3 more stages, because that's what he has in the big mountains of eastern France. Another mountainous day on stage 6 tomorrow for the contenders to try and attack Chris Froome. It's the Epic Cycle Series presented by Michelob Ultra, the Critérium du Dauphiné, tomorrow 11 p.m. Eastern on the NBC Sports Network. For more, you can go to NBCSports.com. Chris Froome, stage winner and new race leader. And now for Bob Roll, I'm Steve Schlanger. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We will see you for stage 6 in the mountains.